Bills Mafia. On today's Air Raid Hour pregame, we will be breaking down what we expect to see from the Bills this evening as they take on the Baltimore Ravens in the NFL Divisional Round. Injury updates, key matchups, our pregame superlatives are all coming up. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour pregame show, playoff edition, brought to you by the Cover One Sports Network. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at the Bills Guys. Joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money, and the people are excited. The comment section already busting out. We got Sweet Spike coming in saying let's go. Autumn RE saying good morning and go Bills. Matthew B comes in and says good morning. All here we go. Got another one coming in saying go Bills. We love being underdogs. Let's go. And that's the interesting part of today's day. And Alex King, kudos to you, saying go Bills from Melbourne, Australia.
Nice.
Midnight here. So that's awesome for you. You get to wake up, I guess, tomorrow morning to experience the Buffalo Bills versus the Baltimore Ravens. But I'm excited for this matchup because after a week that felt like it would never end, filled with insufferable national media punditry and Ravens trolls just littering my social media feed, it is finally here, and it's finally almost game time. All season long during these MVP debates between Lamar and Josh Allen, which I think we are all happy is finally over. People wanted to argue, whether it's national media people or Ravens fans, whatever. They wanted to argue that Lamar's supporting cast wasn't all that much better than Josh Allen's. All of a sudden this week, most talking points are that it is the Monstar Baltimore Ravens going up against the Toon Squad Buffalo Bills. I think the final straw for me, I was listening to ESPN radio yesterday, and I don't normally listen to the radio, but it was a 10-minute car ride. I'm like, I'm just going to turn the car on, whatever's on the radio, I'm just going to suck it up and listen to it as I drive from point A to point B. It just happened to be ESPN radio. Chris Canty, Harry Douglas, someone else. I'm not even sure who made the comment because I was like half listening, but when they made that comment, I kind of like almost crashed my car. But the comment was trying to make the equivalence that the Buffalo Bills beating the Baltimore Ravens today would be the equivalent of Vince Young and the Texas Longhorns beating the USC Trojans in the 2005 national championship game, and that Josh Allen would need to be like Vince Young in that game for the Buffalo Bills to have success. I'm just so sick of this commentary because I understand week 5 went the way it did, but this is the National Football League. This is a week-to-week league. The Buffalo Bills defense, those are NFL players too. It's not exactly like it's going to be Josh Allen versus the world today. At least I hope it's not going to be.
No, and a lot of the commentary this week has also been about how it's like Lamar and Derrick Henry versus Josh Allen in a 2-versus-1 sort of matchup, and kind of talk about how that plays into how you want to justify who can win, who should win the MVP this year. Fine. At one point after this game, there's going to feel like there's some closure one way or another, but in another way, there's not, right? Because this whole discourse around the conversation between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson is going to continue even after the awards are announced the week before the Super Bowl and into the off season. So this game, even though we know the culmination of a body of work over a 17-game season really shouldn't be necessarily judged by one game, that's just what's going to happen, right? I mean, that's what people are going to do on social media. That's what people are going to do in the national media. It's wrong, but that's what's going to happen. So I'm just kind of maybe almost like preparing myself as well for that discourse that's going to happen after this game one way or another. And yeah, what happened in week 4 or whatever, both of these teams are different now. I saw a really good tweet from Mike Florio online about the last 5 quarterbacks that the Bills have gone against in the divisional round has been Lamar, Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Pat Mahomes, and Lamar today. So like for as good as this Bills team has been, they've gone through a gauntlet of of quarterback MVPs, the top echelon quarterbacks that
Mhm.
people will put on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks in the NFL, including Josh Allen. The Bills have had to face all of those guys, the
Yeah.
five last year. So, it's going to be a long wait today, 6:30 game, but in one way, I'm just going to be glad it's over one way or another.
And if you're looking for some actual discourse on like what is going to happen in this game, you have tuned into the right place, because another one of the things that irked me this week is not watching national media, because I don't really watch ESPN stuff anymore, but it comes across your timeline. You see it, right? It's hard. It's impossible to miss when you are like chronically online, like I am, trying to prepare for this show. Just everywhere you go, it's Lamar versus Josh, Lamar and Henry versus Josh. Like, I don't think I heard a national pundit utter the name of another player other than Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry. There are other players that are going to be playing in this game, guys. I don't know if you knew that or not, based on what you've seen in the media this week. And we're going to discuss those players, and we're going to break that all down today. But first, let's start with, as we always do, sort of the conditions surrounding this game and the environment surrounding this game, the weather and the injuries. And let's start with the weather. The weather's going to hover somewhere around a high of 20 degrees, real feel in the single digits. There's going to be your usual 50 mile an hour wind in Buffalo, nothing too crazy. And there is a chance of some scattered snow showers. So weather could be possibly a factor in this game. The Buffalo Bills are used to it. The Baltimore Ravens, it's not exactly like they're a southern city. They are used to playing in the cold as well, but temperatures this low, not so much.
No, and when I'm looking at this forecast, it kind of reminds me of that the game the Bills played against the Dolphins a couple of years ago, late in the season, where it was snowing. Tyler Bass had that game-winning kick at the end. Snow on the ground, but not like overly, not overly impacting the game like we saw in the 49ers game, right? So you do kind of hope, I think, in a way that it's not that, because that kind of like does skew a little bit about kind of what this game should be about. And so hopefully not too bad on the snow front. We'll kind of just have to see what happens. But yeah, otherwise the temperatures in the wind, nothing that the Bills haven't seen before. And really, like to your point, the Ravens are not in a warm weather city. Yeah, maybe it is the coldest game Lamar's played in, but I don't think the temperatures are somehow some big advantage for the Bills. And maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see that the low temperatures are some big advantage for Buffalo.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big advantage, but I think early on in the game, it might give the Bills a little bit of an edge, because I do think it'll take some of those players a little bit of time to adjust. But at the end of the day, I think most National Football League teams have figured out how to play in these temperatures. And as long as like the field isn't slick from some kind of precipitation, or there's some crazy massive wind, I think most teams have sort of figured out how to deal with the cold. But as Charles G mentioned, this is the coldest game Lamar's ever going to play in. So early on, sending a bunch of run blitzes, really trying to shut down that run game early, and forcing Lamar, who has stated that he does not like wearing gloves. He's tried it. It doesn't work for him. Trying to get him to throw the ball early and often, and putting him in some down and distances early in the game where he has to throw the ball in some temperatures he's never thrown the ball in before. That might play to the Buffalo Bills' advantage and help us possibly be able to get off to a hot start. But again, that might be some wish casting here from me, as I'm looking for any edge for the Buffalo Bills in this football game. Injuries. The Buffalo Bills, Ray Davis was a limited participant all week. We do not know whether he will or will not be out of concussion protocol in time for the game tonight. The elevations from the practice squad indicate that maybe he will be, because the two practice squad elevations were Jalen Virgil and Will Clapp, not Frank Gore Jr. So Frank Gore Jr. means we very well could see Ray Davis in this game, but it also could mean the Bills are just going to go with two running backs, because they don't want to put Frank Gore Jr. out there to get his first career carry in the AFC divisional round. And Jalen Virgil does play special teams. He could just fill the role of Ray Davis on special teams and be an extra receiver. And then Will Clapp likely called up in case something pops up with Alec Anderson's calf, but he didn't have an injury designation. So that's mostly just break glass in case of emergency type of call up. So the Bills, outside of their RB3, relatively healthy heading into this matchup.
Yeah, and I think it was a positive sign to see sort of Ray Davis on the practice field this week, kind of progressing through the various stages of the protocol. We'll see if he can get cleared in time. I do think the Bills are in a little bit of a tricky spot there with the running backs situation on the practice squad, because this is the playoffs. This isn't early in the season where maybe it doesn't matter as much if you call up a Frank Gore to kind of be your third running back. So the Bills probably thinking like at the end of the day, maybe it's more important for us to have these call ups at other positions. And if we do end up going to this game and really leaning on James Cook and Ty Johnson, and those are the two guys, then that's just what it's going to be, right? And maybe Ray Davis is active and they kind of save him, right? And don't use him unless they absolutely have to in that situation. So we'll just have to see. But certainly there's a chance, right, that he plays in this, which I think really all we could have hoped for after seeing the hit he took last week in the Denver game, that he had a chance to suit up for this game. And I think to me, that's the best possible outcome. Hasn't been declared out. Obviously, he's the only one on the injury report. And so there is a chance. So we'll take that.
On the Ravens side, doubtful. And this is a huge injury for them. Zay Flowers did not play last week, was injured the final week of the regular season. Questionable is former Buffalo Bills legend, Deontay Hardy. His one play really helped us win that AFC East title last year. The only play he made all season, but he is questionable for the game. The likely absence of Zay Flowers to me is just it goes without saying, really. It's just a huge loss for the Baltimore Ravens, knowing that he is unlikely to play. I'm just going to share my opinion here, and you let me know what you think. If I'm the Bills, knowing that Zay Flowers is unlikely to play, my game plan is probably to sell out versus the run and take your chances with Lamar through the air. I'm not saying this is some magic recipe for success. I just think you have a higher likelihood of succeeding making Lamar throw the ball downfield in these frigid temperatures without his best separator in Zay Flowers. These are lower percentage plays, having to throw the ball down the field than letting a guy like Derrick Henry just gash you on the ground again and again and again and help them lead to these long, plodding, extended, time-consuming drives, keeping our offense off the field. Again, way easier said than done, and this is a very oversimplified philosophy, but to me, if I'm the Bills, that's where my head is at entering this game.
Yeah, I think if you're the Bills, like, and you look at this matchup, there are really, it's a pick your poison type of thing, right? Because we know that the Ravens are great on the ground. We know Lamar has been great passing the ball this year. Since the Ravens bye week 14, they've only averaged 207 passing yards per game because they've been so dominant on the ground. In that same time span, they've been averaging 232 rushing yards per game. This is over the course of 5 games, by the way, since their bye week, including the playoff game last week against the Steelers. Their passing game really hasn't been tested, right? If you think about their last 5 games, they played the Giants, the Steelers twice, including the playoff game, Houston, and Cleveland. So their passing offense hasn't been tested. They blew out Houston on that Christmas game. They blew out Cleveland. The Giants game, was kind of a stat padding type of game, I would say, for Lamar, and that's fine. But the passing offense for the Ravens hasn't been tested. You'll see their suppressed yards per game in the last 5 passing. Meanwhile, their rushing is huge over the last 5, 232 on the ground. I agree with you. I think you do have to somewhat sell out against the run. If guys like Rashad Bateman, if guys like Nelson Aguilar, end up beating you in the passing game, but you've effectively, as much as you can, kind of eliminated Derrick Henry from beating you, and that's not going to be the case. He's going to get his, but to try to give the Bills a chance, force Lamar to beat you through the air, I do agree that's probably the best option, and obviously missing Zay Flowers is huge as a security blanket for Lamar.
Yeah, Ralph Wilson Sr. comes in and says game script is to get a 2-score lead and make the Ravens one-dimensional. Please, by all means, Buffalo, get up to a 2-score lead. I would absolutely love that. Easier said than done, but we'll talk about some of the ways the Buffalo Bills can go about doing that in this game. And we are going to start with just that. Our first sort of segment today is going to be the Buffalo Bills offense versus the Baltimore Ravens defense. The big narrative around this Baltimore Ravens defense is how improved they have been since Kyle Hamilton moved to safety full time, and the Ravens benched some guys, like some aging guys in their secondary, like Eddie Jackson, got him out of there. It's a big narrative because, quite frankly, it is true. Dave, what does the DVOA tell us about this Ravens defense?
Yeah, and I see a lot of people talking about how the Ravens are 31st against the pass, and I'm going to get into that in a second, but they're the 6th overall DVOA defense. They're actually 8th in DVOA against the pass, 4th in DVOA against the run, so top 10 in both passing and rushing defense from a DVOA standpoint. Yes, they're 31st in raw statistics versus 8th in DVOA. This pass defense is better than advertised. They've played 5 teams, 6 games that were against top 10 DVOA passing offenses: the Bills, Cincinnati twice, Tampa Bay, the Chargers, and Washington. Since week 11 against Pittsburgh, they've only been allowing 181 passing yards per game, and that's with teams trying to play catch up against this team. So this passing defense is not what it was early in the season. We do have to be careful about looking at the raw statistics there. They're 29th against wide receiver ones, 14th against wide receiver twos, first against wide receiver threes with Marlon Humphrey guarding the slot there. He's been fantastic this year. 21st against tight ends and 13th against running backs out of the backfield. Against the run, first overall in raw stats versus fourth in DVOA. So we do have a good alignment here. They've played 4 top 10 DVOA rushing offenses: the Bills, Eagles, Commanders, and Bucks. Since the bye week, including the playoffs, they've only allowed 63 rushing yards per game. That's over 5 games. And again, part of that is the fact that they've gotten out of these leads and teams have had to abandon the run. They've allowed the lowest yards per attempt on the ground in the NFL during the regular season at 3.6. The Broncos, the team the Bills faced last week, were the only other team under 4.0 yards per allowed on the ground. They've only allowed 12 rushing touchdowns all season, which is the 7th fewest in the NFL. So yes, I see that the raw statistics will tell you over the course of the season, the Ravens pass defense is 31st, but I will tell you since their week 11 bye, they have been very good, both against the run and against the pass. So it's not to be taken lightly, this Ravens pass defense. They are a very good defense overall, as you can see, both top 10 in against the run and against the pass.
It's interesting because I saw a tweet from Yards Per Pass on Twitter too. You said since week 11. Since week 11, these are the quarterbacks, though, that the Baltimore Ravens have faced. Russell Wilson 2 times, Justin Herbert, who's obviously no slouch, Jalen Hurts, who they lost to, Tim Boyle, CJ Stroud without Tank Dell and without Stephon Diggs, and Bailey Zappi. So not exactly the murderer's row of quarterbacks they've faced since week 11. So some positive light, if you're a Bills fan, to think about heading into this matchup. The Ravens defense, they had resounding success against us in week 4. There's no denying it. There's no sugarcoating it, right? They gave our now pretty dominant offensive line some issues. They had our skill position players pretty well clamped down. They shut down our running game. They had Josh Allen sped up. But this is not the same Buffalo Bills offense. Lessons have been learned since then. Things have been corrected. And while this Ravens defense now that gave us trouble then is actually better now, a lot of what they threw at the Bills might not be applicable now, because what they threw at the Buffalo Bills that gave the Buffalo Bills trouble in that week 4 matchup, the Buffalo Bills have now seen it. They seen it, right? And they can go correct it. So I think if you're looking for some positives as a Buffalo Bills fan heading into this matchup, what the Ravens did week 4, they got to scheme up something new probably, because anything they try to throw at the Buffalo Bills that worked for them in that matchup, the Bills have seen before, the Bills have corrected. So unless it's an execution problem or the Ravens have really honed in on something the Bills just can't overcome because they are, too crippled in whatever way, I think the Buffalo Bills will have more success offensively against the Ravens today. Also worth noting, Allen lost a security blanket and Khalil Shakir that game to a sprained ankle.
Yeah, he did. And you start to look at some of the other metrics around the Ravens defense. They have 12 interceptions on the year. That's bottom half of the league. There's 7.1 yards per attempt allowed passing. That's middle of the pack. They're bottom half of the league in third down conversion rate allowed. And, the Bills are bad too. They're 4th worst. But they are second in the NFL in sacks. So now this is 2 weeks in a row. The Bills play the number 1 sack team, in Denver. And now they play the number 2 sack team in the NFL in the Ravens this week. So again, we'll be about protecting Josh Allen in this game, kind of avoiding those negative plays. The Ravens, unlike the Denver Broncos, really have been a little bit middling when it comes to some of these stats around yards per attempt and interceptions and things of that nature, but they can get to the quarterback. Kyle Van Noy's had what seems like we talk about every year, comes out of nowhere to have a great year, is leading this team. Him and Owe have combined for 22.5 sacks. Van Noy also has 14 tackles for loss, which also leads the team. So still areas to be concerned about if you're the Bills going against this Ravens defense. But, for me, once again, kind of comes back to what we said last week against the Denver Broncos. I think priority number 1 And there are a lot of priorities, but to me, priority number one is keeping Josh Allen upright, avoiding those sacks against this team who can get to the quarterback.
Just like last week, the advanced analytics are going to tell you to try to pass the ball on this Baltimore Ravens defense, pepper them with passes, and try to break through that way. But given the weather and what we saw last week under similar circumstances, because the advanced analytics would have told you the same thing last week, this team, the Buffalo Bills, should be able to run on anybody they want to run, no matter how good their run defense is. It didn't work for them in week 4, but I do think this is a much different football team. I think the Buffalo Bills need to make sure that they stick with the running game today. They need to make sure that Baltimore starts creeping people up to the line of scrimmage. And then if they can be consistent on the ground and have success on the ground, over time, over the course of this game, things will open up for them over the top. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, I know it's going to be a daunting task, but you got to run the football on this Baltimore Ravens defense.
You have to. And look, you had success against the Denver Broncos last week, the number 1 rushing DVOA defense. Now, I know this is going to be a bit of a different animal because you dominated time of possession against Denver. They were very bad on third down offensively, and you were able to kind of control that game. I don't think that's going to be the case today. I don't think you're going to see a dominating time of possession effort. Hopefully for the Bills, but like hopefully not for the Ravens. I feel like it's going to be fairly even, and you do need to stick to the run. A lot of the talk this week, as you mentioned, has been about Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, and like these people online cannot seem to have nuanced conversations where say no, James Cook is very, very good. He's not at Derrick Henry's level. He is very, very good. And if the Bills can get James Cook's production anywhere close to maybe what the Ravens can get out of Derrick Henry, that's fine. Like it doesn't have to be to that level, but you've got to stick with it enough to where he's getting you set up for second and third and shorts. You're moving the chains, you're keeping possession. You have to keep possession against this Ravens team. And James Cook is going to have to be a big factor in that. And, I'm not going to get too ahead on the take me higher player, obviously, but he's got to be near the tops of the list today for the take me higher player.
The best defense is an offense that can possess the football and score consistently. Because if you can possess the football for long chunks of times, as we saw last week, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry just don't touch the field enough, right? Like you shorten the game that way and you keep it close. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, stick with it on the ground in terms of like how to go about being consistent on the ground, how to go about having success on the ground against this team. I think you continue with those Alec Anderson packages and go out there and execute them. You continue with those Reggie Gilliam packages. You go out there and you execute them. It's James Cook on first and second down. It's Ty Johnson on third down. There's no need to reinvent the wheel for this group. It's just about going out there and executing. And that is not easy, right? Travis Jones, big boy. Michael Pierce, big boy. Justin Madubuike, big boy. Like those guys are not easy to displace. McGovern and Torrance, they struggled in the first matchup against the Baltimore Ravens. They need to learn from what happened in week 4. They need to improve. I think they will, and I think the Bills will have more success on the ground today.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the Ravens only allowing 3.6 yards per carry on the ground. James Cook on the season averaging 4.9 yards per carry. If you can kind of split the difference there, knowing that he's probably going to be a little bit less effective against this stout defense, and you can get him in that sort of 4.2, 4.3 yards per carry realm, I think that's a good day for the Bills and James Cook, because that puts you in 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. That's manageable. You got to be in those situations today for the Bills. And we saw how effective the Bills were on third down offense last week with Josh Allen as well, and sort of running on third down and converting those short yardage. They were very good at that a week ago, and that's got to continue today.
Matchups, I think you like if you're the Buffalo Bills, and Charles G comes in and points it out. Brandon Stevens is Waldo. He is their weak link. It's kind of Josh Allen pre-snap needs to be like the kicker in Waterboy. Do you remember the movie Waterboy?
Yeah,
there was that scene in Waterboy where they needed an onside kick in order to get possession back and to try to win the football game. And the kicker's lining up to kick the onside kick, and he's staring down all the players, and he's just saying to himself, "Where's my bitch? Where's my bitch? Where's my bitch?" And he sees this guy quivering, and he's like, "There's my bitch." And he kicks the onside kick right out. That's got to be Josh Allen pre-snap. Where's my bitch? Where's Brandon Stevens? Like, he is the weak link. That's who you need to be looking for. The Bills should be looking to exploit him. That means they got to get guys like Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman one-on-one with him, and they need to be able to exploit that matchup. But in order to exploit that matchup, they need to execute on those plays. And we've seen the Bills be a little inconsistent when targeting Amari Cooper, and Keon Coleman. So Josh Allen, your ball placement needs to be on point when you are attacking Brandon Stevens. Buffalo Bills receivers, you got to go up and you got a high point. You got to come down with that ball. They need to make some plays outside the numbers along the boundary. Brandon Stevens is the place where you go and get those plays.
Yeah, I mean, I just put in the comment section, Coleman and Cooper need to show up today. It's a tough matchup for Khalil Shakir against Marlon Humphrey in the slot, leading that team with 6 picks. Marlon Humphrey, the number 4 rated corner on PFF's grading scale. Take it
So
again
good
for a
this year,
grain of
man.
salt.
So
But
good.
he has been good, right? That's one where you like, yes, that makes sense. He has been so good. That's going to be tough. I think, Khalil Shakir will have to have an impact, but really those guys on the boundary when called upon, and whether it's, Brandon Stevens or even against Nate Wiggins, who's been also pretty good this year, but especially against Brandon Stevens, whether it's Coleman or Cooper, wherever that, particular play ends up with the matchup against Stevens, those guys got to be ready, and they've got to be ready to kind of make an impact today on the boundary. And I think that's at times where the Ravens, again, throughout the course of the season, have had some weakness in that secondary. But it hasn't necessarily been something, like you said, that the Bills have gone to consistently this year. At times, yes, Keon Coleman has made some nice plays on the boundary. At times, Amari Cooper, since he's been with this team, has made some big plays. But I think there's got to be a little bit more volume to those guys today than we've seen in the last few weeks.
One of the sets that I want to see the Buffalo Bills continue to utilize, and Eric did such a great job pointing it out this week on the film room, is the Buffalo Bills 4-strong look on offense, where they have 3 wide receivers out to one side. They have the running back on that side of Josh Allen. Essentially, they send 4 guys to one side and 1 guy to the other side in terms of skill position players. They bunch the defense up. They put them in conflict. They create some easy separation, and the Buffalo Bills get a ton of yak plays out of that. You saw Curtis Samuel's touchdown last week come out of a 4-strong look. I think the 4-strong look is a way. Obviously, you can't just go out there and play and be 4-strong, but it's a package the Buffalo Bills can utilize where I think they can have some success against the Baltimore Ravens, create some explosives. So looking forward to see what Joe Brady has drawn up from those 4-strong looks today against the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind seeing some of that as well in the red zone too, right? Because sometimes, yes, those plays can be useful to getting some explosives, but also when you get down in the red zone, you need to be a little bit more creative today. You have to come away with 6s and not 3s in this game. So I hope that 4-strong look also gets utilized in the red zone a bit today. And so I'll be looking for that as well. Sweet Spike says almost 200 watching. Smash that like. That's awesome. That's a ton of people watching right now for the early morning. I know people are going to be anxious today. So appreciate you all tuning in.
The pre-tailgate, right? I don't know if anyone's out there tailgating yet first. I mean, of course, there are people out there tailgating right now. It's Buffalo, but maybe some of you haven't left for the tailgate yet. And we appreciate you guys for tuning in. 443 William Swan comes in and says, if I recall correctly, there wasn't much motion, pre-snap movement in the game against the Buffalo Bills. Home field advantage is huge for this game. Josh will be a surgeon today. Yeah, I really hope that Joe Brady's got some things in his bag today. We saw him do a great job last week, orchestrating and being patient and creating matchups for the Buffalo Bills to be successful against what was a very good and Denver Broncos defense, probably the best in the AFC. So he's got another big defense on the horizon this week in the Baltimore Ravens, and hopefully he's got some things cooked up. We talked about the running game. We've talked a little bit about the passing game, but let's talk more specifically about who steps up today, because this everybody eats approach, right? One of the Steve Tasker was talking this week to Jim Rome, I think it was, and he was just like, everyone in this room is bought in. They understand that one week you're going to be the guy that gets 6 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown, and the next week you might get targeted once. And everyone is okay with that. Everyone's okay with their role, and that's what makes this offense so effective. No one guy needs to be locked in on. No one guy needs to be fed. No one guy really has the right to really stand up and be like, I don't get fed enough. Cook, Johnson, the running backs, obviously, Knox, Kincaid, the tight ends, Shakir, Samuel, Hollins, Cooper, Coleman, the wide receivers. Who do you think has the bigger of days today in the passing game?
Yeah, I mean, this one's tough. To me, this is a Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox situation. I do think Coleman and Cooper are going to have to contribute, but I think their volume may offset each other. I think you could see a pretty, maybe a high yards per catch type of game for Coleman, only on like 2 or 3 catches. But to me, Kincaid and Knox have to play a factor in this game. As I mentioned, the Ravens 21st in DVOA against tight ends. And you look at some of these games this year that the Ravens have played, giving up big games to guys like Brock Bowers early in the season, giving up big games to guys like Jake Ferguson in that Dallas Cowboys attempted comeback game. They've given up, some games to guys that are not quite at that type of level. 6 receptions to Jordan Akins on the Browns, 6 receptions apiece to Gesicki and Tanner Hudson on the Bengals. And I know they played them twice, but they've given up some games to tight ends, and that can be a vulnerable area of this defense. So if I'm the Bills, I think this is a Kincaid and Knox type of game, with obviously a little bit of a sprinkling on the boundary as well with Coleman and Cooper. But to me, I think if you're looking at across the field and you're like, wow, Baltimore's got Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely to kind of throw the ball to. Well, the Bills have Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid to throw the ball to. So if it's me, would not surprise me at all to see a big game combined from the two of those guys. There has been some success for tight ends against this Ravens defense this season. I would expect, at least in the passing game initially, for the passing game initially to kind of funnel through those two guys.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to watch Khalil Shakir in this game because good receivers get open against good corners, right? So if you're Khalil Shakir, is there a way you can go about still having a productive day, even though you are covered by Marlon Humphrey? So that's going to be an interesting sort of measuring stick game, I think, for Khalil Shakir. You mentioned Knox and Kincaid. I agree with that. I think you need to find mismatches here and there with Cook and Johnson. I think the ball will be spread around a lot. I can't emphasize enough that I think one of, if not both, Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman need to step up in this game, and we need to have some form of pulse on the boundary. But the two wild cards here are Mac Hollins, who always seems to make a playoff script or a play in the red zone. Do we get one of those two things from Mac Hollins today? And then the emergence of possibly a healthy Curtis Samuel. Could we see some more Curtis Samuel down the field today too? So that's super interesting. I think there's a lot of wild cards. I think that's the funny thing, right? Like it's almost just a guessing game. Like who's going to step up this week? It's hard to sort of predict, but I think with Knox and Coleman, I think you are spot on with two of the guys that really need to step up. I think we know Cooper and Coleman need to step up. That's easy to predict. It actually happening is another thing, but I think Knox and Coleman getting some production in this game is a much more safer bet in terms of what actually probably will occur. All right, let's transition now to the Buffalo Bills defense versus the Baltimore Ravens, which is offense, which is all the national media want to talk about this week. No, this is all they want to talk about. This is and for good reason, right? The following statistic that I'm about to share with you guys is absolutely nightmare fuel if you're a Buffalo Bills fan. The Ravens offense gained 10 plus yards on 24.6% of their plays this season, the highest rate of any team in the NFL. The Bills defense allowed 10 plus yards on 23.7% of opponent plays this season, the highest of any team this season. The strength of their offense is the weakness of our defense. Personnel wise, this is going to be a challenge. We spent years acclimating our offense, acclimating our whole team, our whole identity to compete with the Kansas City Chiefs. And now that we finally have a roster that I think is beat to build the Kansas City Chiefs team that we're going to have to face next week if we win this game, the Baltimore Ravens have come and thrown a little wrench into that because maybe this defense isn't built to stop a team like the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, who is, quite frankly. But so it's going to take all hands on deck and a massive effort from this Buffalo Bills defense to slow down this Baltimore Ravens offense enough for this Bills offense to score enough points to beat the Buffalo Bills.
And look, I think someone put a really good analogy on social media. I think it's been shared around a bunch, and I don't know who originally posted it, but it's like the Ravens, Chiefs, and Bills are like a rock, paper, scissors against each other, right? You have the Bills who match up pretty well against the Chiefs. You have the Ravens who match up well against the Bills, and then you have the Chiefs who match up well against the Ravens. So it's kind of like a triumvirate of teams at all kind of have match up better against the other team. And so, yeah, that's all for a right to go to Arrowhead next week, which of course, both of these teams look like they are poised to potentially knock down the Chiefs. And I think that's certainly been a talking point this week. But let's get into the DVOA here for the Ravens offense. This is going to be a little bit scary if you're a Bills fan. They are first overall in DVOA offense, first in passing, first in rushing. They are literally first in every DVOA statistic in passing, rushing, and overall. In passing, they're 7th overall in raw statistics versus first in DVOA. So there is a little divergence, but not a ton. They've played 6 games, 5 teams. that were top 10 DVOA pass defenses: Philly, Houston, Denver, Chargers, and Pittsburgh twice. They have the highest yards per attempt in the NFL at 8.8, the fourth fewest sacks allowed in the NFL, 24. And Lamar, obviously, with that ridiculous 41-4 TD to INT ratio. On the rushing side, first in raw stats, first in DVOA, averaging 187.6 yards per game on the ground. They are a wagon on the ground. They played 5 games against top 10 DVOA rushing defenses. The Bills, surprisingly, maybe in that category: Houston, Philly, Tampa Bay, and Denver. The Giants 11th and Pittsburgh twice 13th. So they played some good rushing defenses. They have the highest yards per attempt in the NFL regular season at 5.8, the second most rushing attempts on an absolute basis in the NFL at 554. Detroit Lions 621. Crazy. They do have 29 rushing fumbles, but have only lost 3 of those fumbles. And they have the third best third down offense in the NFL regular season at 48.2. The Bills were 7th. So again, this team is an absolute just like stampede on offense, first in passing, first in rushing. And while the Bills were going up against a really good defense last week in the Denver Broncos and kind of could take their time a little bit, maybe with their offense getting up to speed, this offense is probably not going to allow you that type of cushion this week. This team is the best in the NFL offensively, and the Bills are in for a big test today.
Yeah, I mean, the people in the comment section have pointed this out a number of times now, and you're 100% absolutely correct. The best defense against this Baltimore Ravens offense is your offense, is being able to maintain longer possessions just to keep them off the field and getting out to early leads to, get the Baltimore Ravens a little bit less two-dimensional and a little bit more one-dimensional. I mean, this is a game where, and again, I hate to say it, right? But this is a game where, and I still wouldn't do it, but if I was the head coach, but this is a game where if you win the toss, you consider receiving to try to go out there and get up 7-0. But if I'm still deferring because I want that double dip opportunity. I'll never turn down the double dip opportunity. But it's one of those things that maybe the Buffalo Bills might consider if they win the toss to receive the football, to try to go now and get up 7-0 and try to get the Ravens a little bit off script.
Yeah, I think I'm taking the opposite. I want that possession coming out of the half. I want at home, okay, at home with the crowd on your side, winning the toss, deferring, giving your defense a chance to kind of like maybe redeem themselves a little bit from that first time these two teams played. That's kind of where I'm leaning mentally, right? And seeing if you can get your defense to give your offense a chance right off the bat and kind of flip the script from the coin toss, get that extra possession. That really can mean a huge amount in this game if you can stop the Ravens on that first possession, get the ball yourself, get a score, and then maybe that, you keep that lead going into the half, and then that double dip opportunity then allows you to go up by 2 scores. Like, this is going to be interesting. I would certainly kick if I was the Bills, especially give that defense a chance. I see where you're coming from, and I know you wouldn't do that, but I would be surprised if either one of these teams won the toss and took the ball.
Yeah, 100%. Let's start with some of the biggest issues the Buffalo Bills are going to face. The RPO game, obviously, Lamar and Henry, they are an absolutely brutal combo. It's like pick your poison if you're a defense. Some other issues, the Ravens obviously use a lot of heavy personnel. They're probably going to use a lot more heavy personnel given the weather and the fact that they're probably going to likely be without Zay Flowers. Everyone loves to talk about their 300-pound fullback, Patrick Ricard, right? Those are some talking points heading into this football game. So let's start with the nickel versus base debate. How did the Buffalo Bills attack this Ravens offense that is missing its best receiver and separator in Zay Flowers? Do you expect, what kind of percentage do you expect to see between nickel defense and base defense for the Buffalo Bills?
It's funny because the Bills maybe are a little bit stubborn in this regard, and Sean McDermott, I would expect they would still come out and start in their nickel package, which is the Bills' base defense, right? The 2 linebacker set. But I do think that if that becomes a problem early on, you may see a pretty quick switch up and see a situation where you have Milano, Dorian Williams, and Terrell Bernard all on the field at the same time, especially because Zay Flowers is not going to be playing in this game. Now, you hate to take Taron Johnson off the field because actually he does help you a bit in the run game. But this game against Derrick Henry, it's not so much the size that you need, and you do need the size, but it's about not letting him get the momentum in the first place and taking the right angles to bring him down. The Ravens kind of love some of these pitch plays as well, in addition to the zone read and RPOs. Like you cannot let him get ahead of steam. And to me, so that's the big thing. And I think that's not necessarily even about the linebackers, right? That's, I think, more about the defensive line and kind
Mhm.
of like getting into those gaps and kind of, forcing Henry to either maybe not get ahead of steam or to go to a different way than he really wants to with the play. And that's where guys like Taron Johnson still can make an impact in coming in and cutting down Henry at the legs. And so I think they will start in their nickel, which is their bread and butter, but I could see, depending on how things are going, if they need to make adjustments, moving a little bit more to that three linebacker sort of traditional 4-3 type of alignment.
Yeah, Eric did a really good job breaking it down this week. The Bills have gone into base defense just 28 times this season. It's exclusively against heavy packages. They do it against 13 personnel. They do it against 22 personnel. They do not do it against 12 personnel. So when the Ravens are out there and it's Isaiah Likely and it's Mark Andrews, but it's not Patrick Ricard, right? Like I don't think you're going to see the Buffalo Bills utilize three linebackers. It'll be interesting to see if they go with a 6 offensive lineman at all and then 1 tight end. Who knows what the Buffalo Bills decide to do then? That might be the real mystery, but that might be more of a 13 personnel thing the Baltimore Ravens try to do. And in that case, the Buffalo Bills will go heavy. So I think when Patrick Ricard is on the field, the Buffalo Bills will go heavy. When there's a 6 offensive lineman, 2 tight ends, like when they get into sets like that, I think the Buffalo Bills will bring out Matt Milano, Taron Johnson, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, and Dorian Williams. But I think this is a team that is mostly going to stay nickel because those three linebacker sets, and take this with a grain of salt as well, because I don't think they've had a 3 linebacker set this year that has involved Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, and Dorian Williams because of injury. So it's been a multitude of guys in terms of that. But the Buffalo Bills defense, as Eric broke down, have allowed 6.1 yard per play while in base defense and 4 explosives, some of the worst data in the National Football League. Small sample size, never the combination or the trio of Bernard, Milano, and Williams, but that's just something to consider. And you also need to look at the history versus the Ravens. In 2020, they went 3 linebackers on 40% of the snaps, only allowed 3 points, had success versus the run, and won. But then in 2022, they played nickel, shut down the run, they won. And then this year, there was a lot of 3 linebacker sets again, 30%. But they were also without Taron Johnson. They were without Terrell Bernard. They were without Matt Milano. So there's really a lot of grain of salt to the 2024 Week 5 data. I think everything points to the fact that you're going to see the Buffalo Bills, unless there is Patrick Ricard out there on the field, or there is an extra offensive lineman and it's some kind of really jumbo heavy set like 13 personnel. I think they're going to be nickel, and I don't think they're going to go away from it.
Yeah. And again, this comes down to what I said. It's about angles. It's about not letting Henry get momentum. If he has momentum and he's running downhill, I don't think it really matters whether it's Dorian Williams or someone else. Like he's going to run that person over. And the fact of the matter is like we're talking about Derrick Henry here and like maybe bringing those linebackers in to kind of help from a size advantage there. But like there's still going to be a lot of Lamar Jackson running the ball in this game as well. And I think in those situations, the Bills would rather be in their nickel, their base nickel defense, to have a little bit more speed on the field for chasing down Lamar Jackson or containing Lamar Jackson and kind of forcing that contain and coming up and sort of trying to take away those edges for him. And, one area where he absolutely killed the Steelers last week was up the middle of the field, right? And so I don't think you want Dorian Williams one-on-one with Lamar Jackson in the open field. I'm sorry, you just don't. And so again, it's a difficult matchup. There's no magic bullet. You have to play sound fundamentals. You have to play solid on the edges and in these contains and have this integrity and not let Lamar Jackson sort of get up through the middle of the pocket. And he's going to make plays. It's just going to happen, but you kind of have to limit the damage. And I do think that the Bills will pretty much remain unless something really weird happens in their sort of base, which is their base being their nickel defense.
Yeah. Carl Thurman comes into the super chat. Always appreciate you, Carl. He says the most prolific offense in the NFL all year, the Detroit Lions, imploded last night, turning the ball over 5 times. The Bills defense can win today. Yeah, I mean, if you're the Buffalo Bills, if you can force some turnovers, this is a completely different ball game that we're looking at. But forcing turnovers is going to be a difficult thing to do against this Baltimore Ravens team. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, make every attempt, right? Especially in this frigid weather, we should be peanut punching left and right, and we should be We should be trying to force some of those turnovers there. And again, some effective run blitzes can also have some effect on the play action game. And if the Buffalo Bills with Zay Flowers out, maybe they can have some success in the secondary picking some passes off as well.
Yeah, and the Ravens are +6 turnover differential in the year. We talked a lot about how the Bills are +24, just the best in the league. But since in their past 7 games, including last week's game against Pittsburgh, the Baltimore Ravens only have 2 turnovers in their last 7 games. So they have been very good. And again, I know some of that comes with the opponents they've been playing haven't been great. Giants, Browns in there, but only two turnovers in the last 7 games, and 2 of those games against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have been pretty good at turning the ball over this year. Turnovers are going to be potentially huge. We saw last week neither team turned the ball over technically, and yes, the Broncos had a turnover on downs, but neither team turned the ball over last week. You would expect that both teams will be playing a pretty clean game today, and again, one turnover maybe is all it could take to swing the tides.
Looking at some of the matchups and schematics and other things outside of just the whole nickel versus base debate, which is pretty much all the national media wanted to talk about this week, Buffalo Bills defensive line, one of their game plans, one of their philosophies is to really get upfield, and that is something that has bit them, and some defensive coordinators have taken advantage of. The Ravens have an answer for defensive ends that like to get upfield. That's Lamar Jackson and his legs. That is Justice Hill in the misdirection game. They have tight ends like Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. If you're the Buffalo Bills, that philosophy needs to be slow down a little bit, because we saw in the week 5 matchup, a guy like Justice Hill absolutely torches in the passing game, right?
Yep.
I'm a huge fan of Isaiah Likely. We loved Isaiah Likely in the pre-draft process. He's a guy who can torch you there. So I think the Buffalo Bills need to figure out something different philosophically, right, up front, as to how to contain Lamar, how to get at the quarterback, how to create their pressures. And I don't think we're going to see a huge increase, but I do think we could see some more man-to-man for the Buffalo Bills today without Zay Flowers in the lineup.
Yeah, and I mean, the Bills were pretty fortunate, I thought, last week that the Denver Broncos really didn't use their running backs much in the screen game. They tried a couple wide receiver screens, but McLaughlin was absolutely absent. And my friend who's a Broncos fan was just screaming at the TV, like, why are you not using Jaleel McLaughlin in the screen game? Jaleel McLaughlin, now I fast forward a week, like Justice Hill is a guy that comes to mind for me, and a guy that really played well against the Bills back in week 4, but don't overlook him, right? I think he was my respect you player back in week 4, and he absolutely torched the Bills. You can't forget about him. He's a threat in the passing game. We know the Bills have struggled in defending screen game and defending running backs out of the backfield this year. So you can't overlook Justice Hill in a man coverage situation. You're probably going to have a linebacker matched up with him. In week 4, it was Dorian Williams who kind of got beat on a play, but Bills have Milano back, obviously, and you kind of have to pick. Do you want Milano to spy Lamar Jackson? Do you want Milano to be covering Justice Hill out of the back? Like, there's some strategy here that the Bills have to kind of decide. And it may end up being like, look, if we get beat by Justice Hill, we get beat by Justice Hill. We're not going to let Lamar, beat us as much with his legs. So an interesting little matchup sort of within the matchup there on the Bills defensive side.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at it too, I talked about this at the top of the show when we talked about how Zay Flowers is going to be out. If you're the Buffalo Bills, and again, no disrespect to Lamar, because he can easily torch us in a million different ways. This is not me disrespecting Lamar. This is just me saying, if the Buffalo Bills have some overarching big picture philosophy, it's sell out for the run and hope you can make plays against Lamar in the passing game. That should be what the Buffalo Bills do. And in the same vein, make Lamar beat you by throwing to his wide receivers, right? Like, again, easier said than done, but the focus should be on taking away the run. Lamar, Henry, that RPO, I mean, good luck, figure it out. But Justice Hill, you don't want him beating you. You don't want those tight ends beating you. Like, their receivers are Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, and Tylan Wallace, right? Like, if you're the Buffalo Bills, you want to create an environment, where that is where Lamar Jackson has to throw the football. Like, I like our chances with Christian Benford against Rashad Bateman. I like our chances with Rasul Douglas against Nelson Aguilar. Again, it's not hat on a hat. The Buffalo Bills do like to play mostly zone, so there's more intricacies to it than that. But the Bills corners have shown pretty well that they can shut down outside of the lines this year. Make the Baltimore Ravens throw the ball to the boundaries. Make them throw the ball outside of the middle of the field. Do not let them attack the middle. Do not let them eat underneath. Do not let them run the football. Like, again, easier said than done, but that's what we should be trying to take away. The issue with that is your middle linebacker, Terrell Bernard, is like 220 pounds, soaking wet. Ed Oliver is a smaller 3-tech, right? He's a penetrating 3-tech. Daquan Jones has not played to his abilities that we've seen him for this year. Our rotational wave defensive tackles have certainly not played up to the expectations this year. The safeties have struggled at points this year. Not as bad as maybe some people think they have been, but they haven't been perfect, right? It's not peak Milano, it's not peak Hyde and Poyer back there, right? The spine of this defense is where the Buffalo Bills have issues, and it's where the Baltimore Ravens are going to try to exploit them. So it's going to be really interesting to see if those guys can figure it out and come up with a game plan to shut down the run or slow down the run. I should stop saying shut the run because you're not going to be able to do that. But slow down the running game, take guys like Justice Hill out, take the tight ends out, and make them throw it to the wide receivers. It'll be interesting to see if we have the personnel and we come up with a game plan to be able to do that.
Yeah, and one thing that you can't do, which the Bills allowed in that first game against the Ravens, is if you get this Ravens team into 3rd and longs, and that's like 3rd and 9, 10 plus, there was some back-breaking conversions by this Ravens offense against the Bills back in week 4, and some pretty third, like some 3rd and pretty long situations. And if you have a chance and it's 3rd and 10 plus to get off the field, you better get off the field today. And the Bills were good against the Denver Broncos, but this is a whole other animal in the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers could not get off the field last week. The Ravens were 10 for 15 on 3rd downs, and that was including a couple drives in the second half where they did stall out a bit, but 10 for 15 on 3rd downs. If the Ravens are 10 for 15 on 3rd downs today against the Bills, I think that's going to be a long day for the Bills defense. You got to keep the Ravens, somewhere in sort of that 40% or under realm, because they're going to convert 3rd downs. The Bills haven't been good at stopping 3rd downs, but you got to keep them somewhere in that 40% or under realm. Give yourself a chance and get off the field, and ideally hold them to field goals in some situations. I expect they're going to be aggressive on 4th downs, which surprisingly, the Ravens have the 4th fewest 4th down attempts in the NFL this year, but that's also because they've been so good on 3rd down, and they really haven't had to go for a ton of 4th downs this year. So you got to force their hand, and you got to be ready. And the Bills have to be, like you said, the spine of that defense has to show up today. This is probably the biggest game for Ed Oliver and those guys that they've had, probably going back to the divisional playoff game last year against the Chiefs when they weren't fully healthy through that spine of the defense. They have to show up today. You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to shut them down completely, but you got to slow them down enough to give yourself a chance.
Dan Van Kay comes in and says, I think our defensive linemen feel called out. Looking forward to their response. Yeah, you can just from like the gear they were wearing. I can't remember what their shirts were saying, but the defensive linemen, the defensive tackles were wearing shirts this week that talked about how they felt disrespected. And we're going to spend much of this offseason talking about how the Buffalo Bills defensive line needs a makeover. But there's no making over the defensive line on the fly. Like, your personnel is your personnel. You got to figure out a way. And a lot of that is just guys stepping up and making plays because maybe they feel like they have a chip on their shoulder, because maybe they feel disrespected. So great comment there from Dan Van Kay. I think Terrell Bernard's going to be really important in this game too, just communicating, getting guys in the proper place. We're going to talk about him a little bit more when we get to our superlatives. And it'll be interesting if maybe they try to, again, very unlikely, right? Because they haven't done it all year, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Do the Buffalo Bills maybe try to weaponize a guy like Cole Bishop in this game and get Cole Bishop involved in this game plan somehow near the line of scrimmage, get him matched up on some tight ends, do something a little different, throw a different wrinkle at the Baltimore Ravens. Maybe they try to get Cole Bishop involved as some kind of like star defender. I doubt it, but who knows? Right.
I mean, when they were talking about the safeties in the last couple of weeks, and Sean McDermott made a point to the media to not forget about Cole Bishop right now. This would be a huge spot. Rookie divisional playoff game, but like his bread and butter is defending tight ends and playing near the box. Like we said that in the pre-draft process, we love that about him. And then athletically, he tested probably better than a lot of people expected at the combine and sort of vaulted him into that second round. But he is athletic. He is the most athletic safety the Bills probably have on just pure traits. But it also comes down to trust and being in the right spot. And so that's, again, where McDermott maybe has to make a decision or two. That's a big spot for him. We'll see if he gets any kind of snaps. We'll see. But the future's bright for Cole Bishop. I'm just not sure it's in this game.
All right, let's get into it. Our pre-game superlatives. All right. As always, every week we go and we give some pregame superlatives. We make some predictions. We have a little fun with it. We start every week with our Take Me Higher player of the game. For those of you who haven't been with us before as we do these pregame superlatives, this is one Bills star player, upper echelon Bills player that needs to step up and have a big game in order to be successful. And one of the rules is that player cannot be Josh Allen because, quite frankly, that is just a given. So, Dave, who is your Take Me Higher player of the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to go away from this one, but this guy really rose to the occasion last week against the number 1 DVOA rush defense. Now, granted, the Bills were dominating time of possession and the Broncos offense really helped them out in that regard. But James Cook, to me, is the Take Me Higher player today for the Bills. The number 1 raw statistics rushing defense, a top 10 DVOA rushing defense in the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers really never got the run game going in the games where the Ravens have lost this year or have struggled a bit. Teams have been able to run the ball a little bit against them, allowing a league low 3.6 yards per carry. But like I said, I think if James Cook can be in that 4.2, 4.3 range, which is still a half yard below his season average, he's going to be key for the Bills to come out on top in this game. A lot of the talk this week has been about Lamar and Derrick Henry and the Bills maybe not having the guy like Derrick Henry there. And James Cook should maybe have been a Pro Bowler this year. He's certainly not at the elite, upper elite level, maybe that a Derrick Henry is at the prime right now. He is with that team and the fit. But James Cook can not go toe-to-toe with Derrick Henry, but contribute in a meaningful way to where he kind of hangs with them and the Bills stick with the running game. James Cook, to me, has to have a good game today for the Bills to have a chance to win.
No bones about it. Agrees with you. He says Cook. Roy Collins says Tyler Bass. Who I really hope not. This game does not come down to Tyler Bass. Carl Thoman comes in and says Matt Milano. My Take Me Higher player of the game is going to be Terrell Bernard. I think the easy way to go on defense is to say Ed Oliver, and that's not exactly untrue for anyone who wants to say someone like Ed Oliver needs to really step up and have like his biggest game of the season. Not untrue, but Bernard to me is the green dot. He is the communicator of this defense. We saw him against the Denver Broncos, putting guys into position to excel versus the Denver Broncos and just putting in guys into position in general. The way people talk about Terrell Bernard, he just sees the game different. He studies hard. He has this high IQ. He knows where to put guys and how to communicate. And he really is he's the brain of this defense. And he's going to need to be at the top of his game in that regard. And on top of that, we talked all last year about how he just had a nose for the football and he's just making plays left and right and he's forcing turnovers. We need him to make a play today in his own right, whether it's an interception or a forced fumble or a fumble recovery. Like we need Terrell Bernard to come up and step up and make a big time game changing type of play. So on top of putting guys in those positions, we need Bernard to make one of those types of plays, be sturdy, be sound when he's in those one-on-one opportunities in the run game, right? And take guys down as well. So Terrell Bernard to me is my Take Me Higher player of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both picked the spines on both sides, right? Cook and Bernard. Bernard, yeah, I think you're right about the communication, though, right? Getting guys in the right spot, especially against this Ravens team, where one misstep, it could be the difference between a stop and a touchdown against this team. So it's a good pick.
All right, up next is our wild card player of the game. Our wild card player of the game is one player who's not a star player, not one of the upper echelon elite cornerstone players of the Buffalo Bills, but someone who needs to step up, make a play or two for the Buffalo Bills to have success in this football game. Dave, who is your wild card player of the game?
Yeah, I think both tight end twos could be factors in this game today. Isaiah Likely for the Ravens and Dawson Knox for me on the Bills as a wild card player. In some of these cold games, he's had some big games. He's been a reliable, although not a huge volume option for Josh Allen. He's been reliable this season, has made a couple key catches in games down the stretch. And I think that the tight ends will have a chance to make some plays in this game. So the Dalton Kincaid obviously going to have a chance. But I do like Dawson Knox as a guy that Josh Allen trusts, has been in these types of games before with Josh Allen, has played in very cold games. Obviously, we all remember that first touchdown he had against the Patriots a couple years ago in the wild card game that kind of got things rolling for the Buffalo Bills. So to me, my wild card today is Dawson Knox, a big play or two from him, maybe even a touchdown can really be, huge and make a difference for the Bills. So I'm going Dawson Knox as my wild card.
Dan Van K comes in and says AJ Epinesa, right? He's going to be the guy probably across from Gregory Rousseau on those early downs. So it's going to be up to him to help contain Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, that RPO. No bones about it. Says Keon Mossing Stevens. And I'm kind of going similar to what, he said there. And Charles G comes in and says Coleman Coop probably won't have many chances, but got to take advantage when they do. I tend to agree. I wanted to go Keon Coleman, but I think for a rookie, that's a little much to ask. So I went with Amari Cooper. I think Brandon Stevens is the weak link. And even though Amari Cooper name recognition, you'd think he'd be like, take me higher player of the game. But really, Amari Cooper is just, part of the process here in Buffalo, right? Doing his 111th hasn't really been, an elite type of player. So to me, Brandon Stevens is the weak link. They're going to need someone to attack it. I think Amari Cooper, his veteran leadership, his veteran savvy, I think he is the one who's going to step up and deliver some production for the Buffalo Bills on the boundary this week. My prediction, 5+ catches, 80+ yards, and a touchdown for Amari Cooper.
And experience against the Ravens too.
Yeah.
You gotta count that in as well. So
Carl Thurman comes in and says wildcard player is Brandon Codrington, who is back now and will take one to the house. That would be nice. Get a little special teams touchdown. That helps. Gilliam in the pass game, says Ralph Wilson Sr. Wild enough. Yeah, that might save that from for your hot take or something, man. But up next here is and plenty to choose from, our Respect You player of the game. All right, Dave, who is one player from this Baltimore Ravens team that we need to respect in order to have success in this football game?
I mean, look, I think you got to put Lamar Jackson in the same category as Josh Allen. Like, that's a given. We don't need to pick Lamar Jackson here. Like, it's an obvious situation where he is, the head of that team and you have to respect him. So I'll go with maybe the next closest obvious answer, and that's Derrick Henry. I think, all pro, 1,900 rushing yards, a lot of the talk this week about who helps who more. Is Lamar helping Derrick Henry? Did Derrick Henry help Lamar? And all that's well and good. But the fact of the matter is Derrick Henry's having the best season of his career, and he's had some very, very good seasons. And he is going to be an absolute load to bring down. The Bills are going to have to be on their game, try to slow him down and contain him, because he is going to get his yards, but you just have to limit the damage. And you have to respect Derrick Henry. The Bills have been up and down against Derrick Henry at times in the past, when going back to when he was with the Titans, and they're going to need to have one of those days today where they do maybe have the best game they've ever had against him in the history of the Bills playing Derrick Henry. I truly believe that. So for me, it's an obvious choice, but it's the right choice in Derrick Henry.
No bones about it. Comes in and says likely. Andrew's spin adds likely. Don't let him get going. If an auxiliary weapon is going to beat you, I think an auxiliary weapon is going to beat you, but let's hope the Buffalo Bills can find a way to get Lamar thrown to those receivers and not so much throwing to those tight ends, those running backs out of the backfield, etc. Charles G says Roquan Smith, gotta know where he is at all times. Carl Thoman says, gotta watch out for Lamar Jackson's all-time favorite target, and that is Mark Andrews. Jamal Jones says Kyle Van Noy, have to be careful with him. I appreciate that one. Kyle Van Noy always seems to make a play, especially against the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to go with Baltimore's defensive line, specifically if I have to pick one guy, Justin Madubuike, but whether it's Michael Pierce, Travis Jones, that you just got to have an answer for the fact that they're for their strength at the point of attack. You really do. You cannot become one-dimensional on offense. The Buffalo Bills have to figure out a way to run the ball in this Baltimore Ravens defense. So I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens defensive line. Again, if I have to isolate it to one guy, I'm going to go Justin Madubuike, but just so stout up front. The Buffalo Bills need to figure out an answer for that. All right, up next, our hottest take from this football game. All right, Dave, what is your hottest take heading into this football game?
Yeah, hot take for this. I think these teams are so evenly matched. I think that this really is like a coin flip game. We see by the Vegas odds. Obviously, it's a 1.5 point spread in the Ravens' favor, but really, this game is truly an even matchup. My hot take for this is 6 lead changes today in this game. I think that this is going to be I think this is going to be a back and forth type of game. We saw a bunch of lead changes in that Tampa Bay Washington game, but I think today it's going to be a back and forth type of game. It will be close, truly like a boxing match as these teams kind of fight each other out to the last round. 6 lead changes today is my hot take.
Jonathan Larson comes in and says holding Henry down to 65 yards. I'm going to go somewhere in a similar vein to Jonathan Larson here. I say the Ravens ran for 271 in their Week 5 game against the Buffalo Bills. I say the Buffalo Bills hold them under 150 total rushing yards today. So the Buffalo Bills have an answer for the Baltimore Ravens on the ground today. The Baltimore Ravens have to be a little bit more balanced and throw the football. No bones about it. Charles G says hot take. The Bills have more rushing yards than the Ravens tonight. That would be great.
That's big.
If you could tell me that after this game is over, the Buffalo Bills will have more rushing yards than the Baltimore Ravens, who won the football game, I'm gonna go with the Buffalo Bills. So I would definitely like it if that comes to fruition this evening. Roy Collins says Lamar throws 3 picks and loses a fumble. That would be great too. I'm not gonna lie. Dan Van Case says Tyler Bass 5 for 5 on field goals, 29-23 Bills. Carl Thoman says hot take, the Bills had the same exact score as Week 4, but the reverse, and they win 35-10. That'd be wonderful too. We can wish cast and we can manifest that. That'd be great. All right, our final pregame prediction here, and that is take me back to the future segment, our score prediction. All right, Dave, take us back to the future. Paint a picture for us. How does this football game end?
Yeah, look, I think my hot take is obviously that there's going to be 6 lead changes. So I think that, people are going to be on high anxiety alert today in this game. I'm going to be very anxious waiting for this game. I do think it's back and forth. I think whatever team wins the toss is going to have the early upper leg, because I think that actually the defenses maybe have a little bit of success against each other, against the other team early, and then the team coming out of the half with the ball is going to have a decent advantage. But I do think it's going to go back and forth. Both teams are going to find their footing on offense, do their damage on offense as they've done. I could see this game being sort of like a mid-20s to high 20s, low 30s game for both teams scoring wise, with all the lead changes. And in the end, I'll just say, I think, as Aaron Quinn put in the comments section, somehow, some way, Tyler Bass is going to make a game-winning kick in this game, and the Bills end up winning 35-32, I'll say, because we need to have some lead changes in there. So 35-32, Bills win in the end with a Tyler Bass game-winning kick.
I think the NFL wants a future classic or an instant classic here. I don't think they're going to get it. I have Bills 34, Ravens 24. I think the Bills win by 2 scores. Defense does enough to slow down the Ravens' attack. The Bills' offense learns their lesson from Week 4, have enough juice to score 30-plus points for the 14th time this season. So my prediction, Bills 34, Ravens 24. More wish casting and manifesting than anything. But it's the games that are always like the most hyped up end up not being all the best games, right? Like no one thought Lions Commanders was going to be an absolute vibe, and yet it was. So I don't know. And then sometimes everyone thinks it's going to be a great game, and it is, like Bills Chiefs and the ending we don't like to talk about, right? So ladies and gentlemen, that'll just about do it for us here on the Air Raid Hour pregame show. Thank you as always for joining us again. Hopefully we have some really great things to talk about tomorrow. Hopefully we have another pregame show to do next week. I don't want to stop having to do these things. I'm already into my draft preparation, but I don't want to fully invest myself in the draft preparation yet. But don't forget, the Cover One post-game show is live following the game. And if you are looking to support this show, the Air Raid Hour pregame show playoff edition, you can do one of 3 things. Number 1, you can smash that like button. We'd really appreciate that. It helps us with the algorithm. Number 2, hit that share button and share this podcast, this vidcast with friends, families on social media, text message, whatever. Anyone you think would enjoy watching this before the game, share it to them. Word of mouth is always appreciated. And then the final thing you can do to help us out, once this video is done being live and it is available on demand to replay, go into the comment section and leave a comment on that on the video. It could be any kind of comment that you want. It can be positive, it can be negative, it can be Ravens fans telling me I'm an idiot, whatever you want. Just whatever, as long as you don't hit the dislike button and do it, as soon as you just leave a comment, say whatever you want, get it out in the comment section. Helps us with the algorithm. Any comment is a good comment as long as it's also not followed by a dislike. So Don't get any ideas, Ravens fans. We were very respectful, I think. So,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much. We will see you tomorrow. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comment section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!